Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Morton Blackwell, president of the Leadership Institute, and it is my pleasure to welcome you to this, our first Wednesday Wake Up Club breakfast of the new year. We live in interesting times. Who said?
You always say that.
Well, I'm a conservative. I tradition and etc. You do understand that that constitutes part of an ancient Chinese curse, which somebody cursing another saying, "May you live in interesting times," because interesting times are when all the horrible things happen, and years of peace and prosperity are not interesting. That's the derivation of that. And generally, I give people here a selection of some atrocity that has been perpetrated by the left, as reported in the morning newspaper on the day of the breakfast. But I'm in a little change here, just a little change, not complete change. I did start off with interesting times because Edmund Burke once said, "When reform is necessary, it is necessary to reform." Well, I am changing just very slightly because this is a story that is remarkable, and since it's early in the morning and it may have been too cold to get out early and grab the morning newspaper as you were bundling up to come to this meeting. This is a story in this morning's Washington Times, and I'm gonna read rather more of it in the opening here. The headline is "Colorado Combats University's Bias." Subheadline: "Lack of Political Diversity at Issue." Article begins: Denver. Kurt Ham considers himself a liberal, but he's been stunned by what he sees as pervasive discrimination against conservative students and faculty at the University of Colorado, Boulder. Very interesting. My mother attended the University of Colorado at Boulder. Article goes on. During his 6 years on campus, Mr. Ham says he's watched professors spend class time blasting Republicans. He's seen student groups denied funding to bring conservative speakers to campus. Faculty members have told him privately that hiring a conservative professor would be, quote, "next to impossible," close quote. Student went on to say, "Critical thought and debate are no longer taught. Students learn, rather, to keep quiet and to agree with whatever message the professor is preaching," said Mr. Ham, graduate student at CU Boulder, who spoke here at a December 18th state legislative hearing. Quote, "This is not education, but indoctrination." It was a state legislative hearing, and it featured testimony from about a dozen students offering examples of liberal discrimination against conservatives in the curriculum, funding, and grading. Well, who is behind this? State Senate President John Andrews, a graduate of the Leadership Institute. And what is the left's response in the article? Mike Huttner of the Rocky Mountain Progressive Network says higher education presidents are really starting to resent it. The more time Senate President John Andrews, the more time he spends on this and the less time lost my place, and he says he's going to get hammered for not focusing on more important issues, which is, of course, giving more money to the universities that are running all this biased operation. Anyhow, I thought that was very interesting news, and it happens that the Leadership Institute is going to today send copies of this article out to all of the more than 200 active conservative student groups that we are working with and which we have organized on campuses all around the state. And by the way, we organized in the fall semester 47 new campuses with CLP. And I don't want to take anybody's thunder too much on that, Jim, but I'll proceed here. If you haven't signed up to receive monthly notification for the Wednesday Wake Up Club breakfast, take a moment to fill out the breakfast registration form, which is there on the table in front of you, and you can drop that form off at the table next to the elevator as you exit the third floor after the breakfast. By the way, you can purchase a copy of this morning's presentation or a number of past Wednesday Wake Up Club breakfasts. Our Center for Print and Broadcast Media will gladly provide you with as many of those tapes as you'd like at $15 a piece, a bargain. In 2003 at the Leadership Institute, we trained 3,562 students in 144 individual schools of 31 types. And we set a new record for students trained in a year, and the increase between 2000 and 2002 was 13% increase in our training in 2003. You have in front of you our brand new 2004 school schedule. I urge you to take a moment to review the calendar and consider attending one of our programs or sending people you know to appropriate programs here. And now to really launch this, I want to ask Joel Brewer to step up here. Joel is in charge of our intern program, and he is going to offer an invocation and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Joel?
Thank you, Morton. Would everyone bow your heads, please? Dear gracious Heavenly Father, we thank you for this morning. We thank you for the beautiful day. We thank you for the wonderful meal we've had this morning. We ask your blessings upon Delegate Black as he comes and speaks to us this morning. We ask that he give us something that we can take hold of and use this week as we continue to serve the cause. We ask for your protection of our military overseas, for our leaders, our president. We ask that you give them the guidance to make the right and proper decisions. We ask all these things in your Son's holy and precious name. Amen. Now, do the pledge, please. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joel. And now I'm going to present to you Jim Eltringham. He's going to give an update on the activities of the program department. He is Director of Public Relations for the Campus Leadership Program. He has developed exciting new seminars which are strengthening our campus conservative groups. And previously, Jim produced and hosted a weekly public affairs program on WMUA, a local radio station in Amherst. His program was Politics as Usual. And in 1998, he was elected to a 3-year term as a representative to the Amherst Town Meeting. He's a graduate of the University of Massachusetts and earned his degree in journalism. While there, he organized conservatives in student government and served as editor-in-chief of a conservative newspaper. Jim Eltringham.
Thank you, Morton, and good morning and Happy New Year to everybody. I have good news and bad news as we look back on 2003. The bad news first, of course, is that, and I don't think this is going to come as a surprise, but the universities are still dominated by liberals. there's very good news to go along with that, and the good news outweighs the bad, that it didn't really stop the campus leadership program or the campus conservative movement in general from having an excellent 2003, and you saw evidence of that when you picked up newspapers and turned on your television or even tuned in your radios. In fact, 2003 brought an unprecedented wave of publicity, and the campus leadership program itself was featured in the Los Angeles Times, the Washington Post, the Washington Times, the Baltimore Sun, the Seattle Times, the Houston Chronicle, Human Events, Time Magazine, and several appearances on both Fox News and MSNBC. And of course, the centerpiece, which you saw back in May, of this great media success was a tremendous 9-page article, a cover story in the New York Times Magazine featuring the Bucknell Conservatives Club, a CLP group up at Bucknell in central Pennsylvania. More recently, the Washington Post ran a 5-column, page 3 story about the efforts of the Young Conservatives of Texas, a CLP group at UT Austin. And they decided they were going to have a professor watch list. They published a list of the most biased professors. Needless to say, that didn't go over too well with some of the professors, but it gave the students a little bit more information when they were registering for classes the next semester. When the University of Central Florida CLP group decided they wanted to have American flags in the classrooms, this was a little bit out there for some people at UCF, the student government actually voted down the proposal. The media attention brought so much pressure on the university that the administration overruled it and said, we're going to make sure that these flags go in. They raised private donations to make sure the flags went in. And when the CLP group at the University of Oklahoma mentioned that they might consider doing the same project, the administration instantly relented, preemptively and before a formal proposal was even made, and said, we're going to make sure that we raise money to put flags up in classrooms. And these are great stories about media attention, and I'll tell you something, this is great news, and the article that Morton read today is all great news. It makes us feel great in this room, and we could go on talking about this until the eggs go cold and the donuts go stale. But it means so much more even than it does to us, to those students on campus. This is why I love what I do, is because I get to talk to students a lot. And as excited as we all are that we see these rays of hope on these college campuses, those rays mean so much more to those students because they're alone. They're on the front lines and they're in the trenches. And so in the last year and a half, I've noticed a difference in the attitudes of conservative students. A year and a half ago, a student might call us up in near tears talking about what the left is doing on campus. Now they call up excited because they've seen their fellow students debating on Hannity and Combs, and they've seen their fellow students quoted in the New York Times. They've seen this massive media attention, and they say, hey, why not me? That's why we've been able to start 47 new conservative groups, because campus conservatives are fed up. They don't want to take it anymore, and with the support that you've given to the Leadership Institute, we're able to help them get their message out. As Justice Brandeis said, sunshine's the best disinfectant. Conservative students know it now. They're done with the liberal hypocrisy on campus. They're not going to take it anymore. So all in all, I guess 2003 was a pretty good year, and we're just starting with 2004. So thank you for your support, and stay tuned.
Thank you very much, Jim. It is very exciting what is going on at the Campus Leadership Program, and you're doing a fine job in helping make it happen. And now, to introduce our speaker, I'm going to present to you Hugh McNichols. He is our direct marketing manager here at the Leadership Institute. And before he came on board with us in 2002, Hugh put pen to paper to raise funds and mobilize conservatives for a number of clients and employers, including Richard Viguerie, the College Republican National Committee, Mark Cole for Delegate, the Persecution Project, and other clients. He was fought for conservative candidates in campaigns in Virginia, Texas, Ohio, and Vermont as a volunteer, as a campaign manager, and as a consultant. And recently, he provided get-out-the-vote consultation for our guest speaker this morning. Hugh is a veteran. He served as a U.S. Army Ranger, among other infantry and intelligence assignments. Hugh is deeply grateful to his father and his mother, as he says, for becoming Americans and for raising him right. He is fiercely proud that his father, the late Dr. Ronald W. McNichol, fought the Nazis in North Africa, and that his mother, Jill McNichol Harrell, fled Cuba before the communist coup. Come introduce our speaker, Hugh.
Thank you, Morton. And good morning. Our guest speaker won his bid for re-election in November 2003. Sorry, can you hear me better? Everyone hear me? All right. Dick won his bid for re-election in November 2003, and therein lies a tale. One man who disagreed with Dick's principles decided to tear up Dick Black for Delegate yard signs and throw them in the trunk of his car. When a volunteer for Dick's campaign confronted him, the vandal ran him over. Miraculously, that volunteer escaped serious injury. Others who wanted to defeat Dick tried to intimidate people into putting up yard signs for Dick's Democrat opponent, Patty Morrissey. One brave widow refused to knuckle under and instead put up a Dick Black yard sign. Someone trespassed on her lawn and tore down that sign. Miss Renee Self, Dick's able campaign manager, who would be with us but couldn't join us this morning, visited with that widow. Then Renee put up another Dick Black yard sign, this one with 56 staples. I like the spunk in that. Emily's List sent in ground troops. Other hardcore leftists drove into Loudoun County from out of state to toil for Dick's opponent. And at least one fellow who wanted the radical left to triumph stooped so low that I won't recount the details here, as ladies are present and y'all are eating. The bad guys lost on election day. Dick, his able daughter Michelle, Renee, volunteers, and voters carried the day. But you have to ask yourself, why the gutter politics? Why the ugliness? Why so much interest by out-of-state fringe groups in whether or not one lone delegate returned to the Virginia House? I'll tell you why. Because Dick Black is a staunchly pro-life and profoundly conservative who not only believes in the Founding Fathers' dream for our country, he fights for it. Where others talk, Dick takes action. And that makes a lot of people, liberal and moderate, and that's both sides, that's both parties, furious. According to Roman poet Publius Syrus, it is an unhappy lot which finds no enemies. Our guest speaker this morning is a happy and victorious man. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to introduce you, Delegate Dick Black. Dick.
Thank you. I'm very pleased to be here. I want to thank Hugh for the work that he did, and I want to thank Morton for loaning him to me a little bit. And
Strictly a volunteer.
Strictly a volunteer. Strictly a volunteer.
Organization we couldn't help you.
And but anyway, all of the support that I have received and all of the advice, and I certainly applaud the Leadership Institute for its wonderful work. The number of people who have gone out from here and have taken on the world is enormous. This is one of the most important places in the whole country in terms of shaping our culture and taking us in the direction we want to go. Now, let me see if I can get linked up here again. I'm told I'm supposed to wear this contraption, so let me give that a try. What I'd like to talk to you about a little bit today is really the idea
or the concept of politics as ideas rather than process. Okay, vision rather than power, money, and that sort of thing. Now, in doing so, I don't denigrate the fact that there are processes that have to be followed. We have to raise money, we have to organize grassroots, we have to do public relations, all of the things that we learn right here in the Leadership Institute. These are essential. But I'm talking about the problem that we encounter sometimes where we lose track of the fact that the ultimate goal is not simply to build a bigger and better club, but the goal is simply to move forward a set of ideas and a vision for the future. I'm pleased to say that in the last election, probably Loudoun County was the political story in the entire state of Virginia. We took a Democrat-dominated government. We had a board of supervisors, we had a school board, we were a heavily Democrat county in terms of its leadership, and we basically swept the decks. We now have a powerfully conservative Republican Board of Supervisors. We have actually taken over the school board. If you can believe that, Republicans have taken over the school board. And we just had a tremendous sweep. Now we're about to move into the legislative session, preparing to take on the great tax debate over whether Virginia will become a high tax state or whether we will tighten our belts one more year and allow the growth that is inevitable in the economy to take over and to generate the revenues that we need. Last year we went through an enormous struggle within the Republican Party, and the struggle was over whether we were going to push through this tax referendum and impose a higher sales tax in Virginia. Fortunately, the grassroots rose up. And as often happens, it is not the party leadership that automatically goes in the right direction, but it is the people at the grassroots who say, look, this is the direction we're going to take, and the party begins to fall into line. We went through some very contentious discussions among Republicans about whether we were going to turn into the party of higher taxes. And eventually, the anti-tax element of the party prevailed, and we had some legislative successes, and then ultimately we dealt with the sales tax referendum in a stripped-down version that we were able to defeat. I think this year you're going to find a difference. I think you're going to find that the Republican Party will stand firm against taxes. We've got the governor's plan coming forward. He wants to impose a wide array of taxes, and I think you're going to see that beaten back, and hopefully we will beat back some of the others that are more difficult, more contentious, like the cigarette tax and the gasoline tax. The party will forget the grassroots at its peril. The grassroots really are the essence of what the Republican Party is. And we are a party of ideas and not simply of process. The party is essentially, at the grassroots, it's a collection of coalition of people who have a passionate view of some issue. When I was first elected, we put together a group of evangelicals, conservative Catholics, homeschoolers, pro-life people, pro-gun people, right-to-work people. These are the types of folks that tend to gravitate to the Republican Party. And frankly, the grassroots is where the action is. I think those of you, particularly young people these days, they don't want to just join the Republican Party because it's a club. They want to join it because that's where the action is taking place. It's certainly taking place on campus now. I'd like to share with you my view of things, which is one bit of it is what I call Black's law of small numbers. And this is the notion that the culture that we live in is not changed by simply mass movements, but by small numbers of very passionate people who have an idea and who cling to it and who refuse to vary from that idea. Campaigning is what we do. We love to do it. We work with people who campaign. Steve Hunt, who just won his campaign for school board in Fairfax County, one of our heroes. We didn't have a whole lot of victories in Fairfax County, but Steve won. I worked with him through 2 elections and was very pleased to see him be elected. We might give Steve a hand. Let me share with you a story of a little campaign that we organized out in a place called Post Falls, Idaho. I have a few family members out there, and in Post Falls, Idaho, which is a place with lots of very large families, it's a family-oriented community, they discovered that there was a plan in the works that really came from the governor through the legislature to the local government, in which they were going to use Post Falls as a dumping ground for felons who were being released. And there was a woman named Laura Popajak. She's the mother of 7 children, a rather young woman, and she joined together with 2 other housewives. There were 3 of them. And they gave us a call and they said, you know, what can we do? We're so upset because they're about to turn Post Falls into a dumping ground for all of these convicted felons. And so we began to work with them. And we said, well, the first thing we've got to do is we've got to shape the message. And I said, what you've got to do is you've got to talk about the children and the fact that you're going to become a dumping ground for convicted pedophiles. And this was the terminology. Anytime that you go into a debate, you've got to shape the language, capture the language early, because once the language is set, then you have to play by those rules. In the abortion debate, we play by the rules of choice and fetus and all of these terms that the left has shaped. We never captured the language of the debate. But in Post Falls, we quickly captured the language of the debate, and we began to do a petition drive out there. We went through all of the churches. Of course, I was just doing this by phone, and I'd get a phone call, well, what do we do next? I said, well, you do this petition drive and go to all the churches. And they did. And they called back, they said, well, this is going like gangbusters. Eventually, this is a community of about 26,000 people. They got 5,000 petition signatures out of 26,000 people. So they called back, they said, well, you know, what's next? We've talked with the local government. They say they don't have any authority over this. I said, well, here's what you do. I want you to go in. They took the 3 ladies, said, I want you to go and meet with the mayor first. And he's going to tell you he doesn't have any power. And when he does, I want you to tell him you have 5,000 petition signatures. And if he doesn't have the power to stop this, you're going to elect someone who does. We did that. They went in, they talked with the governor, and all of a sudden the governor became a bit more receptive. And then we went to each one of the town council members in the same way. We've got 5,000 petition signatures. If you don't have the power, we're going to get somebody who does have the power. They did that. We went to the state legislators, the same thing. Finally, we went to the governor. 3 ladies went to the governor. And they went to him and they said, we're in Post Falls. We don't want to be a dumping ground for pedophiles. By then we had street theater. We had these people. This is a little lesson from Eugene Delgadio. We had children going out there, teenage boys who were in striped prison suits with ball and chain, and they were saying no pedophiles in Post Falls. And they're out on the streets, and all these people, petitions, and all of this is going on. And finally they got to the governor, and the 3 ladies went up and they say, we're from Post Falls. We've got 5,000 petition signatures, if you don't have the power to stop this, then we're going to get a new governor. And the governor said, that's it, we're finished, cancel the whole program. So finally, we had won the battle and they felt very good, but then the local newspaper was just infuriated that ordinary citizens had risen up against the establishment and taken back their government. And they wrote this bizarre editorial, and it said, you know, we believe in democracy, but frankly, there's some times when it doesn't work. I'm serious. So I wrote a letter, which to their credit they did publish. And I said, I'll tell you, you know, America used to be the land of the free and the home of the brave and the land of the free. I said, it is because of women like Laura Papajack and Marilyn Nimmo and the third lady, I said, that we have freedom. I said, after all, this is the American way. And in any event, the battle was won. But at the same time, interestingly, with these petition signatures, these politicians became most interested, and they said, you know, we're your friend, and we sure would like to get those signatures. And so I told them, I said, whatever you do, never release that list. That's your power. That's the clout that you have over the government. You hold it, you maintain it. So they've done that. So we have that example of people taking action, and these are people who have power, who have real, genuine political power. This is what builds parties. This is what makes the Republican Party, is where you have movements of people who are passionate about things. And I want to talk for a minute about the pro-life issue, because there's this constant discussion within our party, within the establishment of our party. What do we do? How do we spin this thing? Frankly, I will tell you, if we did not have the pro-life issue in a Republican Party, we would not control a majority in Congress. We would not control a majority in the state of Virginia in the legislature. Now, whether you're pro-life or pro-choice, frankly, that is the fact of the matter. What happens so often is that you will have consultants who come in and they do surveys, and they'll say, well, you know, your district is 55% pro-choice and 45% pro-life. So you've got to fashion some sort of a message that kind of gives a little to this and gives a little to that. I will tell you that for those people just starting off, I do not believe that you want to ever have anything in writing today that somebody's going to be able to pull out 10 years from now that says that you are anything other than 100% pro-life. Because the tide has shifted very dramatically in America. The time is coming when abortion is going to end in the United States. I was at a meeting of pro-life people from all over the country. It was one of these kind of high-level meetings. And we had a consultant who came in, and I suspect he was with the Republican Party in some way. And he showed some charts, and he said, you know, the real problem that we've got is that in 1994, we had 4 million more evangelicals who voted with us than do today. And he said, we've got to pump those numbers up. And I got up and I said, you know what we've got to do? I said, we've got to get candidates who have the vision. Because frankly, if you think that those evangelicals are coming out to vote because they want to be part of the Republican club, you are wrong. These are people who come out to vote because they believe in something and that they want a party that reflects the ideas that burn in their heart. I'm not sure whether he liked the answer, but I'll tell you the other people did. We have got to follow our vision, and we have got to respond to the grassroots. Getting back to the polls, the pro-life issue has been a major a major issue in all but one of my campaigns. I've run 7 contested campaigns in just under 6 years. I run in a district which leans slightly pro-choice. However, I run as 100% pro-life. It becomes a major issue, and we win. Why do we win? The reason is that the majority of people that you poll really don't care. They really don't vote on that issue. What wins the election is the single issue voter, the person who says, this is all that I care about. If you want to know what the ratio is there, check the bumper stickers in your district. Check how many pro-choice bumper stickers are out there versus pro-life. And you're going to find that in almost every area, it's something like 20-1. Okay, the direction, the tide is going in that direction. As candidates, we need to reflect that, and we need to respond to those single-issue voters. I will tell you that in Loudoun County, where we won almost all of the seats, we lost the chairman of the Board of Supervisors seat. Why? We were beaten by an independent. Our candidate ran as a pro-abortion Republican. Not that he advocated it, but he certainly supported what some people would call abortion rights. The tally of all Republicans from the 8 districts, if you added up the votes that they got, it was 1,000 votes more than the chairman got. The chairman, with the exception of this one issue, was a very appealing individual. He was very capable, intelligent, had virtually everything that you want in a candidate. But he lost that 1,000 votes, and he lost the election over that issue. You know, the Republicans did very, very well nationally in the last elections, and we then were down to a big race in Louisiana, and we came up with a candidate, and the candidate running for U.S. Senate in Louisiana had former connections with Planned Parenthood. The National Party steered the nomination in that direction, and the day that we got the nomination for that woman, we had lost the election. There is too much of a tendency to say, the little people have nowhere to go. We can do whatever we want, and the little people must go with us because they can't go the other way. And I warn the party, and we all need to be warned, that the little people can go fishing. They may not vote for the other party, but they will not come out unless we inspire them and we give them something to get out there for. I hope that we do that in the upcoming presidential elections. I just want to close with one thing that certainly attracted a great deal of attention to my political race. We actually had 9 full-time campaign workers in a delegate race in Loudoun County running against me. We know that 3 of them were from abortion organizations. The others were from all around the country. We think those were gay rights people for the most part. A portion of the reason was that we captured a great deal of news last year with something that I did that some people liked, some people didn't, but it dealt with the abortion issue. And I sent out a very simple letter. Frankly, I didn't think that it was going to get any attention at all. It was directed to 40 of our senators. It's a 99-word letter. It's not a treatise. And I enclosed in it a 28-cent model of a baby at the end of the first trimester. There's nothing gory about that. There's nothing frightening about it. It's a little 28-cent baby doll. And the letter that I sent said this. It said, "Dear colleague, this is the size and shape of an actual first trimester baby. You can see that by the 11th week of gestation, A child is well developed and unmistakably human. Would you kill this child? Abortionists kill most babies at this stage of development. The struggling infants are chemically scalded or slashed apart with jagged knives. They receive no painkillers and experience excruciating pain and terror in the final moments of their lives. I believe that all abortions will end within the next 10 years, and I believe that Virginia will lead the way in restoring the sanctity of human life. That single, thank you. That single letter received more publicity during the session than all other things that occurred during the session. It spoke the truth, it spoke it simply, it spoke it in language that did not adopt or incorporate the other side's wording. The holy grail of the left, the holy grail of liberalism is abortion. If we ever break that, the whole thing collapses. And that's my objective. That is probably my number one objective, is that we will end abortion and we will strike a blow at the heart of liberalism. So anyway, I hope that all of you will join me, and I hope that you will urge the party and your party members to focus on ideas, to focus on the vision that instills hope in the grassroots of the Republican Party in Virginia. And knowing that this is nonpartisan, if you have any Democrats, I tell you, I would love to see a Democrat who would campaign energetically and passionately on the pro-life issue. I tell you what, it would be an enormous threat to the Republican Party if they did. It is our saving grace that this is our issue and that it is not theirs. So thank you very much for the opportunity to be here. Morton, thank you for all that you do. God bless you.
Delegate Black's going to take some questions now, if any have any, and I expect there will be. I already see the hands coming up. Why don't you just take it from here?
Yes, sir.
Yes, hearing about your ability to win elections over the years, I was wondering if you might consider moving down here to Arlington County.
You know, it's interesting. I worked very closely with Mark Early when he was running for Attorney General, and so I went around and I spoke for him different places, and I came down to Arlington. I cannot tell you how impressed I was with the county committee, the county Republican committee, because I thought, you know, this is a tough place, and yet we've got this very vibrant committee that gets out there and works very hard. And even though it's very difficult to get people elected to local office, in our statewide races and our national races, the ability to mobilize and to get whatever share of the vote we can get is extremely important in places like Alexandria and Arlington. So I applaud you. Yes, ma'am.
As one of your constituents from Falcons Landing, I want to commend you on your 99-word letter. I want you to duplicate that. I'm requesting you duplicate that on the subject of immigration.
Mm.
Virginia should lead our nation. You're a country of laws. If you violate the law to come into the country, you're going to break the law once you've been granted amnesty. What position are you going to take with the Assembly that we have a moratorium, we straighten out the mess, and then abide by the laws that are made, and we reconstitute the feeling we've had before? I've sponsored immigrants. They become good citizens. These people don't want to learn the English language. What is your position going to be, and where do you put this on your agenda for the new Assembly?
Sure. With the concerns that, for those of you in the back, what are we going to do about immigration and ensuring that people abide by our immigration laws, and that if they immigrate legally and not illegally? This is a huge potential national issue. I've got to tell you, it is one of those things that is burning and festering all over the nation. Our southern borders have essentially collapsed. We are not maintaining our southern border with Mexico. We're not maintaining our southern border in Florida. I go down to Florida frequently, and I've got to tell you, it is gradually becoming a part of Latin America rather than a part of this America. This is a huge problem, and I really think we need to communicate with our national government, which handles so much of immigration. They handle 95% of immigration at the national level. And I'm not sure that our party has quite gotten the message. It's my impression from what I have seen that legal immigrants, whether they are Hispanic, whether they are Asian, wherever they come from, tend to sort of agree with us that people should have to obey the law, that it's not sufficient that you manage to burst through the barrier in violation of federal law, using forged documents and that sort of thing. That is not a basis for American citizenship. And I will tell you, I am most opposed to illegal immigration. I simply cannot support the idea that somehow we need to give carte blanche. We've done this once before. We gave a blanket amnesty, and we said, okay, now this will take care of it. And here we are with, I believe just the border of Arizona, 1,000 people nightly cross the border. That is like a brigade-size invasion of the United States every night, just on the border of Arizona. I don't understand why, with all of our military force and all of this sort of thing, we don't have drones flying up and down the Rio Grande spotting these people. And frankly, I would put divisions of troops on the border and get control of it. We've got to do that. Now, I'll tell you, just all we're able to do is eat around the edges in Virginia. One of the things I did, I chaired a subcommittee dealing with licenses, vehicle licenses, and we concluded that we're going to have proof of legal residence for people who go in to get a Virginia driver's license. As some of you know, many of the hijackers who flew the planes into the building and into the Twin Towers and Pentagon were using Virginia driver's licenses. And so we're going to get control of that. It's going to be a bit painful because it's going to mean a much longer process to get a driver's license, but at the same time I think it's important. Tommy Wright has introduced a bill that will say that illegal immigrants cannot get firearms. Now, I'm a great Second Amendment advocate, and this will probably be the only arms control bill that I ever support, and I'm going to co-sponsor it because I don't believe that the Second Amendment provides a right for illegal immigrants to purchase weapons in the United States. So anyway, to the extent that we can in Virginia, we're going to fight it. But we need to communicate nationally. I don't think they get it right now. Yes, sir.
Immigration can be tied in closely with abortion. Here's your bumper sticker. Roe v. Wade, 40 million abortions, 40 million immigrants.
You know, this is an excellent point. There is a reason that the borders are collapsing, and frankly, it's the same reason that the Roman borders collapsed. You know, nobody invaded Rome. If you know your history, people just walked across the border, just like they're doing in the United States. It's my belief that when you do not reproduce and you do not have sufficient offspring to fill your minimum wage jobs, somebody's going to do them. Now, I have a wonderful friend, very dear friend, who just went to a family reunion. He's a Mexican American, great American. His family reunion had 75 people in Arizona. I have a very dear friend who served with me in the 1st Marine Regiment. His wife, who lives in Guadalajara, Mexico, comes from a family of 21 children. And I will tell you, you cannot sustain a border when you have a population differential of that magnitude on either side of the border. It just cannot be done. So we've got to restore the culture of childbirth and motherhood and a devotion to family that frankly is not there in the United States. We're into trophy children and this kind of thing. We got to get back to families. I do believe that. But I think you make an excellent point. Roe versus Wade is a major reason that the borders are collapsing.
Dick, let's take 2 more questions.
Let's see, I had one in the very back there.
Would you comment on the Republican losses in seats in the state house elections in November? Why that happened and what its implications might be?
Okay, the question was, how about Republican losses in the state house? Frankly, I talked with the speaker about this before the election. No one expected that we were going to be able to hold the number of seats that we had. I mean, we had 2/3 of the House of delegates, and I got to tell you that 2/3 of Virginians are not Republicans. We had such a surge. A lot of it, I think, had to do with Governor Gilmore's leadership. He did a good job. He raised tremendous funds for us. He was a tremendous campaigner. Vance Wilkins, who, though he's had some problems, I will tell you he did a great job of generating candidates and that sort of thing. Frankly, the idea that we're suddenly going to just eventually rise to 100% isn't going to happen. Parties don't work that way. We've reached equilibrium, and we'll go up and down a little bit. But I think the danger is if you say, okay, on the margin we varied somewhat, and instead of going up, it was down slightly. If we say, oh well, we've got to somehow broaden our tent and become more like the Democrats, you watch out. We become more like the Democrats, we'll be gone. So let's see. Yes.
Yes, 2 points, 2 comments. First, just to make sure you know, the DMV, where the hijackers obtained his driver's license, was right here in Arlington, and what I think is the busiest DMV in the Commonwealth of Virginia on South 4 Mile Run Drive. But secondly, just to encourage anyone here who's not been to Richmond, I know Helen's there during the session, as I am regularly, anyone who's not been to Richmond to take the time during the 60 days that start next Wednesday, come down. When you see the House delegates in session, you'll see how often Delegate Black doesn't hesitate to take the floor as often as necessary to stand up for what's right for his district and for Virginia, and I commend you on that.
Well, thank you very much.
If that doesn't count as a question, somebody else gets a question.
Oh, okay.
Back to your episode at Post Falls, Idaho. Surely you agree that those who govern have certain responsibilities. Now, my question is, if you were governor of Idaho, what would you do with those convicted?
Well, okay, the question, this actually came up. There were, the officials said, well, we have a responsibility in Post Falls to accept and to rehabilitate these pedophiles. And it was our position that if the pedophiles are unwelcome in Post Falls, that is their problem. It is not our problem. Okay, and that was our line. Now, frankly, if I were the governor, they would probably go to some of the major cities. I mean, obviously they've got to go somewhere. Frankly, I think that George Allen did a great job when he said we're going to abolish parole, and we're going to keep them behind bars instead of funneling them out into the communities where they can abuse children again. So, but I understand where you're coming from. Some certain things have to be done, but I certainly would not have picked a place like Post Falls, where the average family size is probably like 5 children, and it would have been a disaster for them. I'm just saying, you know, people have to shape their lives, and there are always people who are willing to say, well, you know, you've got to make the sacrifice. Let them make the sacrifice. Put them in the neighborhoods of those liberals that wanted to dump them in Post Falls. That was my position on it. Okay.
Well, Delegate Dick Black is one of my heroes. There hasn't been, I think, a full discussion of how valuable and important he is to conservative principles. He is a man who takes his role as a leader seriously, and he is available to help conservatives do important things to advance conservative principles. Where there are no conservative candidates offering themselves, Delegate Black will go recruit a conservative candidate. Where there are 2 or more conservatives running against each other potentially for a party nomination, and there's a content-free Republican also running, then Delegate Dick Black is a fellow who will come in and try to figure out one way or another to reduce the number of conservative candidates to 1. And the man has a strategic view of things. He works very hard and achieves a lot and is justly admired. And I thank you so much for coming. As a little token of our appreciation, let me present to you one of the Leadership Institute's Adam Smith neckties.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, I invite you to join us next month, Wednesday, February 4th. Our Wednesday Wake Up Club breakfast will feature a gentleman whose name will probably not be familiar to you as I call it out, but I assure you it will be a wonderful presentation. Our speaker will be Dr. Daniel Dreisbach, who is a professor at American University. I had the opportunity to hear him speak in the fall at a meeting in Williamsburg, and I'm telling you, this guy is something else, and it will be a very important presentation for us when Dr. Dreisbach speaks to us on February 4th. Urge you to come here for that. And then those of you who would like a tour of the building should please meet Eric Olson up here at the lectern at the conclusion of the breakfast. Eric, where are you? Are you here? Eric? Well, that isn't going to help. Who is here who will volunteer to do it? Mrs. Connie Marshner will be happy to lead you on a tour. And if you would please see her for a tour, and we'd be happy to run you. Oh, here he is. Here he is. Eric was out. I trust he was doing something useful out in the hall. All right. And Eric will conduct you on the tour. I thank you all for coming and wish everybody a Happy New Year.